Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. I'm gonna just say first and foremost that I had something I had to do yesterday, so I didn't really accomplish much. I think I recorded one episode of Lorelei, and honestly I don't know if there's even much to say there. At a certain level, if I talk too much about what happens in Lorelei, I'm just spoiling the entire game. Um, And if you can stomach watching the horrific, grotesque visuals, uh, I would recommend watching my coverage of it. Guess we're going to be playing Dragoncraft today. I also obviously didn't get any work done, but I didn't play any extra Shadowverse here. In the process of having to do other things that messed with my insomnia, so I've just in a I didn't sleep enough, and I say this almost every time nowadays. And I also went through a drive-through, and I feel a little sick from. I'm hoping what is something closer to a case of food poisoning, and not that I've caught something else. Although, in all honesty, showing symptoms from particularly this pandemic in less than 24 hours, I don't think is something that can even really happen. So I imagine more than likely it's I ate some food I was allergic to, not even food poisoning. But I am in a weird position because of that. So I'm gonna just try and go as far as I can today. But if I start to get sleepy, if I start to feel really, really sick, if I even have to run to the bathroom, I'm gonna just end the stream and leave it for Friday. Um, Honestly, I kind of would like to go back to sleep, but I haven't been able to do that. Compounding onto that annoyance, I've been having trouble on my internet for weeks and weeks now, and I'm not sure if I've actually pinned down the problem. There seems to be several problems. Things I think just have never really worked. I think some of the setups I've set up have never really worked in the first place. Um, but it seems like one of the things I had going wrong is causing problems where it's kind of just crashing and then restarting every 30 minutes or so. Um, and it would cause this annoying thing where you could watch like an hour of YouTube perfectly, no slowdowns or anything, and then all of a sudden everything would just come to a grinding halt for a minute or two. Um, and that is not certainly how you want your router to work. But yeah, that's been an annoyance, and I've been working on it for hours today, and that's why I'm late to starting. And I guess that's pretty much going to be the accountability section for today, because there's really nothing else to say, isn't it? I think a lot of the deep underlining DNS over TLS setup that I thought was working, I don't think it actually was working, so I'm just going to start over from scratch on that. My ad blocker on my router was the thing that I think was crashing every 30 minutes, causing the slowdown. I did update the software to the new DNS mask, so it may just be a case that this firmware in particular is just a little bit of a problem, but I was having the slowdown problem before then. I still can't implement IP version 6. It's just too much work and too much of a time commitment, frankly, to try and do DNS over TLS and DNS secured over IP version 6. and I don't think my internet service provider really gives a decent version of IP version 6 anyways. It's not like native IP6, it's something else that complicates the issue. Even though, in theory, if you had IPv version 6 websites and servers that you're connecting to, and your connection and your Wi-Fi router is IP version 6, there might be a small improvement in security there. That is still a lot of ifs. Can't be attacked. So if I do this, okay, so we can buff up that character probably for a while.
Stream on. Shutting down. Freeze. Shutting down.
So every time this thing dies, it gains +1/+1. Well, I'm probably doomed from that. In the NTP servers, the network time protocol server, trying to get that to run on my router also. That seems to not work. Also, the timer on the router seems to still be like 2 minutes off always. It may very well be just an issue if I'm connecting to the wrong server. That is just 2 minutes off of what everything else says. Okay. Crystallize would summon 2 dragons. So, here if we hit that, then we can do this. Then we can do this and this.
Stream on. Things I do for fashion.
And then attack here. Try and play that. Do we want to then evolve? Sure.
Be gone.
Never wake again. Never. Freeze. It's so cold.
I should evolve this too.
You're a solid fighter.
I just lost. Okay, whatever. Let's start covering the video game news. Like, if I manage to go through even one stream here today with no real delays on this, I certainly have been doing a lot of quality of service adjustments, and I don't think much of that really changed anything. I was just barking up the wrong tree, I think. One thing I did realize that I had forgotten is that if I connect to the 2 GHz version of my router that has just a actual physical maximum speed, because it's an older version of Wi-Fi that pretty much limits me only to like 75 megabits per second, whereas if I connect to the 5 GHz version, it goes up to 225 megabits per second, which is a big difference there on my cell phone, which is what I was using over Wi-Fi to do speed tests, which was giving back false reports certainly. Which also kind of highlights that my download speed is actually pretty great, but the upload speed is the problem, and that is not great. It is still always limited at about 9 megabits per second. 9.5 at best. And so, yeah, that's definitely not the experience you want. If you're a streamer, that's not what you need will want to have if you're trying to upload videos. Um, and it is certainly sometimes a limiting factor, but not very often, because I also have just not recently been capable of making enough content that I run into a point where I'm creating more content than I can upload. And I still have to schedule and label everything, and that is the more irritating part of that limits the amount of content I make. Let's go ahead and play this. Interesting. So it doesn't get storm unless overflow happens.
Oh, come on!
That's a weird way to phrase that. Certainly. Alright, so let's see. Turn on the ad blocker. That is in Chrome. And then we'll just start covering games. Here we have a game called Lazy Postman. The name itself shows a low effort title. It looks like it's a infinite runner for $1.19, English only. Or they're calling it Runner Racing Casual Walking Simulator. So, doesn't even seem like it was a decent effort in the instance of being an infinite runner. Go ahead and play this. Then play that, I guess.
Settle down, would you? Be gone. We want to be alone.
Interesting.
We work together.
Someday I'll...
See, next we have a game on Steam called Collapse, which looks like it's a platforming game. Looks like it's Chinese, but the subtitles doesn't look fairly polished. Kind of feels more like it's a thing where you have to build your own platforming and find your own fun. $3.19 English Chinese. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Gametsu has A Train All Aboard tourism character trailer now available. So here we see a collection of train people, and only a couple of them are younger looking Moe characters. The rest of them look like actual adults. Which you get into a weird point certainly there where if you're not making all the characters look like Moe characters, then you have to, each artist kind of has to be questioned on what the age range of the characters they animate are. I would guess these younger characters are probably interns or just new hires that you would say are like 18, 19, 20, and then this guy is probably gonna be 100 years old, well, definitely the oldest. And then this guy looks pretty young, and these girls look middle-aged. It is almost certainly also a scenario where where it shows that obviously there's very little desire and very little skill as far as drawing older characters in the anime style. These aren't like common styles, aged people that we see very often, particularly in video games. See, moving on, we have Wholesome Slaughter, which looks like it's just a Doom clone. 99 cents, English only. Gamatsu has the Alliance Alive HD remastered for iOS, and Android launches February 1st in Japan. This is chibi RPG game, obviously. Yeah, so far we haven't seen any major network issues. Have I finally fixed it? Even my ad blocking, which I thought was solid, wasn't really working. There was something leaking somewhere. And there are a couple new options with the new version of the DDWRT firmware, so maybe I can use those options or figure out how those options really work and better implement new features and options. It's a lot of effort, to say the least, though. Like, there are points where I get frustrated and I just think to myself, is this really worth it to me personally, or should I just like get a basic router that everybody would use and just not change any of the settings and have it run by default settings. Of course, the way I have it set up now does a lot more and is a lot more secure, and that's definitely what does make it worth it. But as you start to push more and more to the edges of experimentation and non-proven code or difficult to configure code, it becomes a scenario of diminishing returns. I also haven't gotten back to work on my server, and so getting distracted on working on my router as an IT nerd side project is just eating into any free time I would have had to work on the server. That also was weird, to say the least, is that many times when the router was messing up, it would point to my internal server and say, that's the DNS server, like, when it isn't. It's not supposed to be. So the router itself was giving up and saying, we think this computer over there is better configured than me, so go talk to that. And that's some insanity, to say the least. But that was happening, and I have really no good reason why that was happening. Moving on, we have a game called Escape from Hospital. This clearly is just a asset flip horror game, wandering around the same dark hospital, the style of dark hospitals I've seen over and over again. They're really gonna ruin, if people actually bought these games and played them, this really would have ruined the idea of a spooky hospital in a game for decades. This is $1.19 English only. But thank goodness the good games that have spooky hospitals are not compared to these awful low effort games. See, we're not getting any big pauses here on the gameplay. If there is a pause, it feels very natural and like directly connected to a player actually just thinking and playing, which that is great, because unlike Hearthstone, where sometimes a bad connection might get you a free victory, and maybe on a rare occasion was true for Magic the Gathering. In this game, it's really not worth it it was never worth it to try for that in Magic the Gathering or Shadowverse. So playing fast is much more ideal than having perhaps a slow connection that might disconnect at random, where Hearthstone was much more generous, and you could potentially have a slow connection that would then give you a free victory. I kind of wish Shadowverse did give you free victories more often.
Burning flames will freeze.
Okay. So what do we want to do? We can do that.
Be gone.
Never wake again, please.
We can kill that.
Gotta reload.
OpenCritic has an article here. Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity is the all-time best-selling Musou title. Musou, I guess, being the general term for the Warriors style beat 'em up game, which it's somewhat that's somewhat obvious, but also a little surprising because, like, I wouldn't inherently
Another takes its place.
have thought that would have been the case, but I don't directly know of something that could compete with that idea either.
This isn't a game.
Trying to figure out if there's a way to zoom in. I guess that's the best zoom I can do, is zooming out. That way at least you see the title. This webpage is designed fairly weird because it goes big picture, then big picture, then smaller picture, then big picture, then, and it goes back and forth. Alright, let's see. 6 damage to this guy. And lose. We have Atelier Ryza, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy now available on Steam, which I don't own the first game, so I would be very happy if someone gifted me the first game. And then I would love to play the second game, I'm sure too, but I want to play the first game first.
You're a solid fighter.
I wonder if the main character of this Atelier is going to be more focused on than the other characters, because there was a whole like group of friends in the first game, and the internet certainly fell in love with the main female protagonist in the first game, so I don't know if it's going to be the same group of friends in the sequel or what. This is $59.99, but if you want the digital deluxe, which is the summer fashion costume set, that's $71. And if you want the bonus, which is the season pass, the ultimate edition, they're asking for $109, so pretty expensive there. Let's see what the costume set even looks like. There's 2 images here, and yeah, it seems like it just puts them in kind of a more skin showing, warmer weather type clothing. And then the season pass would be, you get a pre-order bonus, probably too late on that one. Yeah, 2 days too late for that. I didn't know this game was available for pre-order, but I wouldn't do that. Anyways, season pass bonus is another costume. Content coming in the season pass are more costumes, swimsuits. The Art of Synthesis seems to actually be a recipe expansion, and the Art of Battle is a recipe expansion. And a higher difficulty area called Flame Sun Island. So, with the exception of Flame Sun Island and Keldora Castle as an additional area, seems like the other 10 parts you get in the season pass are very cosmetic expansions. So this is a Koei Tecmo gouging. of sorts on a very popular game, and I'm not super surprised by that. I'm gonna, I guess, put the game already on the wish list. There's kind of no reason to not put Atelier Ryza on the wish list. It's already 264 reviews, 87% positive.
Is fighting and
So
despair all you know?
the Atelier Ryza subsection of the Atelier larger running JRPGs would be kind of a great place also to potentially get into the idea of playing JRPGs. Although it still is very much an open question as to where I'm going to magically find this extra time that I could commit 200 hours into playing a JRPG. And I think I own Ni no Kuni 1, so I still should play that first and foremost. Here we have what looks like either Chinese or Japanese game called Zombies Everywhere. Looks like it is an RPG maker game of some sort. 59 cents, English and Chinese. Nothing there of interest. A Cyberpunk 2077 modding tool has been released by CD Projekt Red, which I don't feel like that's really going to help too much, because at a certain point then they're risking giving off the impression that they're telling people just to fix the game themselves, which is what they did with Skyrim, and I don't think there's a whole new generation of fans willing to do what they did with Skyrim to CD Projekt Red, particularly when you had a decent experience and people were very hyped for Skyrim even day one, and they overlooked the bugs, and that is definitely not the reception that CD Projekt Red is getting with Cyberpunk 2077. The Epic Game Store is migrating their Support a Creator 2.0 membership, which Support a Creator, I don't know, is obviously something that Epic set up and then announced, and then I immediately forgot about it, so I think it is probably something of very little impact. The idea that CD Projekt... No, sorry. I was talking about CD Projekt Red in the previous news piece. The idea that Epic Games would turn into something akin to a Humble Bundle type store, where it was in part focused around donating and supporting creators, is not super believable, even though that was a sales pitch that people certainly tried to push. That was definitely the ideas that the Epic Game Store was going to become a better thing. A better storefront for game developers.
Stop, Breeze. Stop.
There we go. Game of Citra has a blog here. How much should I discount my game? It's just an interesting thought. This is one of those questions, though, that would really never have a great answer. And you can see what they're pushing here is just some basic calculations of how many units would have been sold in like 1 week versus another week versus another at different discounts. And they're only thinking up to 30% discounts, where apparently don't do half-step increments, only go in multiples of 10 is their big response here. Which, yeah, apparently that does seem to be the case from their points of information, but these blogs are prance around a lot like they are actual scientific experiments when you have major problems of the person doing the experiment being biased and
It won't be long now.
and the sample size being way too small, and there being just any number of other logical fallacies built around your conclusions. Like, I would not be surprised for a second if somebody put a blog on Gamma Sutra that says don't discount your game at all because it's not worth it. And between those categories, 20-30% off, yeah, that's not gonna, on Steam in particular, convince anybody to buy your game. Maybe I have probably 1,000 to 2,000 games in my Steam library. If I was desperate to buy games during a Steam sale, maybe at that point I could go through my wish list and buy something that was 30% off. But every time I have shopped during a big sale, it has been minimum 50% off, really closer to 75% off or higher for me to even begin to think about considering purchasing a game.
Allow me to test your worth.
Okay.
I know when I've lost.
Time to say goodbye. You will not stand to prove your worth.
There we go.
I will persevere.
Kevin Hart has closed the deal to be Roland in the Borderlands movie, according to a Hollywood Reporter. He was also in the 2 Jumanji movies. This is a slight spoiler for the Borderlands series, but Roland was the guy who died at the end of the main story, or somewhere near the end of the main story in Borderlands 2. If not somewhere in the middle of the main story of Borderlands 2. So, if we assume that the Borderlands movie is going to tell the same story, which very possibly it won't, and that it's not just going to try and tell the events of the first game only, which maybe it would do that, because it really is only the events of the first game that can stand on their own without introducing Handsome Jack. So if they're going to have a Handsome Jack, if you see an announcement for someone being cast as Handsome Jack in the Borderlands movie, then Roland probably is dead, unless they're just going to go in different directions. And it's going to be a weird choice, certainly. That's a weird choice in casting, because Roland is the straight man. He's not comedic, really. He's the military guy with a tragic backstory. Like, the only thing I would say is that he was black, and Kevin Hart's black, and if you're just casting by skin color, that's kind of bad casting, and racist casting. Kevin Hart would make a lot more sense if he was Mordecai, the sniper guy, because that was a more comedic character, or Tiny Tina, even, if you're gonna go crazy in that direction, because Kevin Hart is a comedic actor, and I would want to put him in a role in which he actually can succeed, and not potentially cast him or miscast him,
Nowhere to run.
which is what I think they've probably done. I also have a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory.
You're a solid fighter.
There is talk that a Knights of the Old Republic remake is in the work, or new Knights of the Old Republic game, Star Wars game, is being developed. It would be interesting if that turned out to be Gearbox who is working on that game. Gearbox has not really announced anything else in their future. We also kind of know Randy Pitchford was trying to secretly sell the company. I'm sure the pandemic hasn't helped the business of Gearbox that much lately. I could see maybe 2K also wanting to separate themselves from Gearbox, which 2K owns the rights to Borderlands, so it could definitely be a case that Borderlands 4 is made by a completely different company.
This one's for my family.
So, if Gearbox were able to make a Knights of the Old Republic game, I don't think that's out of the realm of their abilities. I don't think they would completely mess that up, and frankly it would give them a great excuse to get away from the Borderlands art style. It would give them a great excuse to work on something different and step up their success. Gearbox also is in a unique position where it's not so big that it really can't grow any further, and it's not so small that it's inherently doomed to failure and being acquired by other people. I also wouldn't be surprised though if Microsoft did acquire Gearbox. But yeah, that's just a random thought I had with no evidence whatsoever to support it. I'm just gonna hope this hurts this guy. Nope. Moving on, Techraptor has an article here. Biomutant's release date has been revealed for mid-2021. Okay. There's a decent collection of games whose release dates have been pushed back or announced in nebulous terms later than you would think. This definitely looks like a weird game which has like a combination of a lot of different things. I would have thought that from the looks of it, it was going to be more of a Monster Hunter style game, but it seems like it's half adventure, half monster hunting hack and slash game. It feels like it might very well be a lot more linear than I could have assumed, or I kind of would have assumed. Looking at it, this definitely makes it feel like it's a Monster Hunter clone. Well, it's a little surprising we haven't seen more Monster Hunter clones at all. Let's keep on moving. I'm also being able to reload these tabs very well now, and all the images are just coming up immediately. Although, in all fairness, that may have more to do with not using the Great Suspender plugin than anything that I may have just recently done to my router. Here we have NIMBY Rails, not in my backyard. Looks like it's a railroad simulator development game. Placement $15.29 English only. That's way too expensive for the level of graphics there. This. And then 1 damage to 2 enemy followers.
Be gone.
I don't think I actually need to do that.
Did you like it?
Let's see. Gamma Switcher has an ad here. Increased game revenue with app binding on Facebook Audience Network. I don't think many people would really appreciate that as a I don't think the end users would really appreciate something like that. And this is the first time this year, at least, I've seen Gamasutra have sponsored content. Perhaps I've seen it and been smart enough not to open the tabs in previous instances, but maybe this is an indication of business somewhat getting back to normal, or trying to get back to normal. I think we'll probably have a lot of stumbles and false starts, economic-wise. Here we have a game on Steam called To the Snowland platformer game, which looks like it's just a kind of ugly game. I don't even know if I want to call something like this low effort. It doesn't look good. $14.99. Well, at that price, I'll call it a low effort game. English only. Yeah. If I start getting too specific about what I'm going to call a low effort game, and what I'm not, then I need to develop a whole new insult to use, and then I'd have to be creative. So I'd have to think of something there. Here we have a game called You Arrive in Town, which we're calling it an action RPG game. It does seem like you are basically playing some kind of tabletop game. Tile placement. Yeah, it's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons simulator. $8.49 English full audio. I feel like either this is going to be incredibly linear and short and not really worth this price, or it would be just super surprising but then still something you really couldn't play without multiple players. And they want you to play as 1 to 4 players, but there's no online gameplay either, so I guess it would be hand the controller over.
Make haste, Sleipnir. The battlefield's ours.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip that. That just doesn't interest me much. This does interest me. Here we have a game called Encodia, which looks like it is a fairly polished 3D / 2.5D point and click adventure with a cyberpunk environment, very reminiscent of Blade Runner. Oh, there was a whole section at the end of what was it? The Walking Dead game, where you could, at the very, very end of the game, just like the absolute wrong point to do this, they make a reference to Blade Runner that is directly quoting what is said at the end of Blade Runner, and it's just like it's a little kid, AJ, quoting Blade Runner, so he would not have even been born and alive to have ever even seen any movie, let alone Blade Runner, which would have not been age appropriate. Yeah, that was really dumb thing. And then there was still a ton of achievements that you're just not gonna get. Just a ton of achievements that you're not gonna get playing The Walking Dead unless you play it multiple times, and you don't have chapter selects in it, so you'd have to play the whole game multiple times, or at least each episode multiple times to try and get all the achievements. And that's just not something you'd want to do. There. They gave me the pathetic 30 cents of consolation prize for failing 5 times. I'm going to put Encodia here on the fall list. It's $19.99 unless you get the deluxe edition, English full audio. There's very little here that would convince me not to eventually buy this. And the one thing, of course, would be if the game just turned out to be like super short and badly reviewed or buggy. YouTube creators is doing their Black Voices thing. I haven't mentioned it much, but they have been tweeting out and focusing on that, which, okay, I guess fair enough. I would rather, I guess, YouTube be SJW about some of their core concerns, and try to promote like black people. You can't really say African Americans because half of them might be actual Africans or from other countries. And in all fairness, I don't see a lot of black people succeeding. Like, I see one very successful Swedish person and several Americans that have been fairly successful and several Canadians that have been fairly successful, and I guess Jacksepticeye might be Irish or Scottish or something. There's probably been some other UK people that have been fairly successful. Success has not been spread around much at all on YouTube anyways. But, you know. And certainly I have heard many claims of women and minorities being harassed more than the average white guy online, and I'm willing to believe some of that to a certain extent. Some of that also, though, feels like it's just people complaining or mentioning being the horrible things that are said, which I think a lot of other people just don't bother to mention it. Although, in my tiny little YouTube channel, not a lot of insults have made it my way. There's been a couple, but they were easy enough to block. I had the thick skin, though, at the beginning, and I fairly quickly realized that I was not going to ever run my channel to try and please anyone other than myself, and that comes from that gives you a different perspective at the very beginning anyways. If I was desperately trying to be the next PewDiePie and desperately trying to get everybody to like me, then I probably would feel like some of the negative comments I have seen were worth mentioning a lot more. But thank goodness I don't feel that way.
Go with the flow. Be gone. You've reached enlightenment. Stream on.
I'm on cash.
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has the obituary for the Horizon Zero Dawn concept designer Mike Nash. He was, I believe, 36 years old, and this potentially is going to hurt maybe the concept of a Horizon Zero Dawn 3. I think Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is already in the works, so it might hurt him. It might hurt the current game, but I doubt it. So I guess these are some examples of the 3D models he made. And even though this is digital 3D modeling, a lot of it really does feel like it's just working in clay because there's no colors and textures. That would potentially be handled and handed over to a texture designer or a colorist, and that they try to break up the work. There also is definitely possibilities, though, that 3D modelers would be asked to do all the work in a video game. But yeah. They're talking about his work on Gamma Sutra, but they don't even say his age or what he died from. It just says he passed away, so I mean, you can assume it was the pandemic or secondary effects or depression from the pandemic and other things. That would be my two guesses, or then you have some kind of accident. Would be your third likely guess.
How did you avoid my trap?
Moving on, Techraptor has an article here. Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2 hits the PlayStation 5 on Thursday, which this is a uniquely looking painting, which probably is not really consistent with what you're going to see in the game, because I bet in the game you're always in a mobile suit and the camera's zoomed out a lot more from kind of a top-down perspective. I keep feeling like we have to be only a few more years away from a new generation of Japanese people who have not seen and have no reverence for the mobile suit franchise, the Gundam franchise, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe it just kind of cycles where Mickey Mouse, like, I'm sure there's been 2 or 3 generations of people who haven't seen the old Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse and black and white Mickey Mouse cartoons, but almost every generation since then has had a decent number of people who are infatuated with Mickey Mouse, because they keep making new things and continuously promoting Mickey Mouse, at least somewhat, to some extent. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the generation right now in America only really recognizes Mickey Mouse as a logo more than an actual character. Because it's not like they put out Mickey Mouse movies or cartoons unless it's just all on the Discovery Channel or the Disney Channel. It probably is on the Disney Channel. And Disney Plus may change that whole factor anyways. Moving on, Gematsu has a article here. OVA Magica Kickstarter campaign has been launched. This looks like a Stardew Valley type game with little squishy characters that follow you around and you use the farm. So you got a whole bunch of anime characters, but definitely the way they look here is not really the way they're gonna look in the game, because they're using little squashed chibi 3D models. I'll also say there is a pretty drastic height difference here. So unless these are all parents up here and these are all kids, that there seems to be nobody that's about half height. This guy's the tallest of the short people up front. And this is quite the collection of, they almost look like Pokemon trainers. Still desperately trying to get a Dragoncraft victory. Let's see, yeah. You get the little visual novel image here, but then you get the little chibi characters here, and they're showing little hearts. Yep, definitely feels like it's just a Stardew Valley clone, which in itself was a clone of Harvest Moon. But it, I guess, also does have some Pokemon elements to it. There might also be some elements here that are reminiscent of Animal Crossing. So maybe all of that combined might find an audience. There definitely were some flaws with Animal Crossing and just how the online networking and all of that works. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does try to make a competitor to it. And it would be a coin flip, as in my book, as to whether that would work or not. Because a determining factor in my mind would be, if you're going to make an Animal Crossing clone, can you put as many activities and as many 3D models of items to decorate your city with as Nintendo can, or as Nintendo does. Can is very subjective in that point. Techraptor has an article here. Magic Legends beta is coming March 23rd. Apparently it's going to be half card based and half Diablo based, which is weird. I don't think I'd ever play another Magic game though. But yeah, this definitely feels like Diablo, which that isn't a terrible thought. And definitely you see cards here that are basically abilities, I guess. Maybe you use the abilities once and then never again. That seems like an odd combination of two very different types of gameplay styles. Yeah, if Wizards of the Coast weren't such jerks, for lack of a better word, that there would have probably been some decent hype around the idea of them taking their characters and their storyline and their environments and making a Diablo style game. And yeah, there's more story to tell, quality withstanding, around the Dungeons and Dragons universe and the Magic the Gathering universe than there is around the 3 going on 4 Diablo games. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Memories of Tomorrow, which is a visual novel. Looks maybe a little lacking. This is an odd angle, which makes her hips look really, really big. And then this is kind of a weird combination. These are fairly stretched out, lengthy characters, but they're all at this kind of weird Dutch angle, too. It's $1.49. It's English only. I'll put it on the fall list just to see what the reviews are, but I imagine this is not really anything, particularly when I really do have to not play too many visual novels at all. I probably don't want to play too many. Just wasting Evolve to do this. Be nice if I knew if this deck even had some strategy around it, and I could play to that strategy. Next we have a game called Haji Tours, which maybe you pronounce that Haj. Yeah, I think it's Haj. That's how you pronounce it. The Hajj is, if I'm understanding correctly, once in your lifetime, all Muslims must go to Jerusalem and pray around this big prayer stone, or there's something in the prayer stone that's of religious importance. And this is, it's like a sacred privilege to going to Mecca. But I don't think you could satisfy Hajj by doing it virtually. But maybe somebody's convincing Muslims they can do it that way. That this in particular, that sacred stone, is very close to, I believe, the Wailing Wall, Weeping Wall that the Jews feel they need the pilgrimage to also, which inherently is why Israel is always basically at wars, because you have two very distinct groups that don't really like each other, both being forced physically near each other, and both of them not really wanting to let the other group even share the same air they breathe.
It won't be long now.
Now, if you want to get into more religious history, I probably could make a decent argument that both the sacred sites and the idea of Israel being sacred in general has more to do with just continued political manipulations to ensure hostilities stay high. because there's just a general desire to continue to be at war with each other. Which both religions, both the Torah and the Quran, basically say to not tolerate people who don't believe a religious belief. And they may have some small exceptions around that, but the core message is clear. Let's go ahead and see if we can do rotation and maybe play this discard deck instead. This game, Haji Tours or Hajj Tours, is $11.99, English, French, and Arabic. Not VR though, which is interesting. And I'm not gonna immediately throw any claims out here that this is like something that shouldn't be on Steam. We've seen plenty of other games built around interesting buildings, and it is an interesting building. This does give a nice opportunity. Like in normal times, this whole area is full of people, and I think they have to like march in a spiral circle for days to try to get to the wall and actually touch it on their pilgrimage. So if you weren't a follower of Islam and you just wanted to see what the building looks like, this would be a very safe and effective way to somewhat see it. But yeah, you might want to be careful who you're funding there, and if you want to fund them, it doesn't look amazingly great. And then they've got a VR one they promise is coming very soon, which I would like it to be real images too, and not this kind of low effort reproduction of the images. But yeah, generally speaking, I think that's definitely a better idea than making a game like that is a better idea than making just yet another a jigsaw puzzle game or something. Moving on, Gematsu has Haven for the PS4, Switch, and Epic Game Store launching February 4th. I thought Haven had already come out. Yeah, I guess it had PS5, Series, Xbox One, and PC in December. So this now is getting its secondary launch. It came out, and we can look at the Steam page, but I don't think it was super well received. See, and I just clicked on this one. Nope, I am wrong about that. It's overwhelmingly positive. It's on my follow list. Yeah, and I just clicked on this page and all of the images immediately loaded, which that's nice too. This one is on my wish list, but this was also one where I was a little concerned on the age rating on it and the YouTube family friendliness of it, which I feel like YouTube has kind of conveniently forgotten to mention anything about family friendliness and their standards. Right now they're more just focused on getting rid of anyone and everyone that they think is promoting fake news. So maybe they will be like, this is basically a battered spouse syndrome to say this about YouTube, but maybe they'll be more lenient after they get rid of all the people they really hate, which that's total BS. I know that's totally not going to be the case. They're just going to get more and more restrictive until they eventually just collapse under being some other competitor. Next, we have a game on Steam called Altitudes, which this looks like a pixely kind of infinite runner where you're like pressing probably just space to jump up and get higher and higher. It is very reminiscent of one of the games on The Price is Right, And it's kind of like the opposite of the ski-free game where you're skiing down a mountain. This is $1.99 English only with a third-party EULA. It's just not really enough of a game for me, though. Let's see. Discard a card. Okay. We can't evolve, so we'll kill that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Snowtopia, which we can see is mixed. And yeah, it seems to be a ski lodge simulator where you maybe design the ski routes. Early access $22.49, bunch of languages. That is way too expensive for what it is. And I don't... Not only is that probably a game based off doing someone's job, it's a game that seemingly is based off something that nobody I could imagine ever actually would want to do. It does seem like there probably are only a dozen ski architects out there in the world, and I imagine it's something just a general architect would do a lot of work on. So I could get rid of one card and draw two cards, or I could leave it. Let's just leave it. Next, we have Gamatsu saying a point-and-click adventure game called Willie Morgan and the Curse of Bone Town is coming to the PS4 and Switch this spring, which those are fairly old consoles. This is from Badland Publishing. I feel like I've heard of that publisher. It was launched on Steam in August 2020. So this might be yet another game that is either on my wish list or follow list and I've just forgotten about it, or it might be one of the hidden gems I may have missed. This looks like yet another 3D modeled 2.5D point and click adventure game, which I guess if I find a bunch of these and they turn out to be nice, that we might start to get some hope that there's a renaissance happening for point and click adventure games. That also would certainly put you in a weird position if you started to think about a Indiana Jones point and click adventure game that potentially would not be able to compete against several other point and click adventure games, because the market would have just been very briefly flooded with point and click adventure games. Actually, that feels very believable that they would try to make a new Indiana Jones point and click adventure game, and whoever was hired to do it would just not know how to make a game like that and drop the ball horribly.
I told you to leave. Though I said I will rise again.
That and that. And then in the turn. Here's the game Willie Morgan on Steam. It's mostly positive. In the last 30 days, very positive overall. It's $13.99, English full audio. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be on the wish list, so I'm gonna put it on the wish list. I must have missed it. This definitely does feel like a game that I just have never seen before. Which, that certainly just expands that nagging doubt in my mind that I may be missing a decent number of I might be missing a decent number of games that just never got in front of my eyes. I could hit this guy and survive, or I could do this.
I always go with the flow.
I want to do this.
It won't be long now. We reached enlightenment?
And then
Foul
this.
forces of darkness, bow before my tempest. Wind, grant them courage.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. The visual novel Dry Drowning is coming to the PS4 and Switch this spring. So this feels like Badland Publishing is re-releasing several of their old games. Kind of like limited run, but not limited run. And I feel like I would have remembered a game called Dry Drowning. This one looks slightly less interesting. Looks more like a horror game, which I kind of need a flatter horror game now that I'm playing Lorelei. And that will almost certainly be the last of the Cat Lady games for forever, if not for a decent amount of time.
I shall give birth to a new world. You are forgiven.
Let's see. I have a 2 and a 2. Oh man, it does count the 2s. Well, that sucks. I was hoping to get rid of this and summon another dragon.
Stop! Wind, grant them courage.
Gunfire. Sin.
Dry Drowning on Steam is rated very positively too, and is on my wish list, so at the very least I know I didn't miss this one. Seems like Studio VLG is the publisher for this game directly, and Badland Games is publisher for the older versions. So maybe they've changed their name somewhat. Okay. We can play that. And then we can discard that. And do we want to evolve this? Do we have anything that we need to evolve? No, I'm going to leave it. Here we have an article from thegamer.com. I don't know if this is going to be a news source I use a lot of. IO Interactive is planning to double its staff and open a second studio for the James Bond game that they're working on. They're kind of done with Hitman for a while. I wouldn't be surprised. There's definitely weirdness around the Hitman 3 and the way they broke up with WB, so now WB is seemingly making it more difficult to have the levels from Hitman 2 be imported into Hitman 3, particularly since Hitman 2 I think was only available on sale on Steam, and Hitman 3 at the moment is going to be an exclusive on the Epic Games Studio. So the whole shenanigans, lots of shenanigans are happening.
This one's for my family.
There's also weirdness personally for me with the Hitman relaunch series, in that I just don't know if there's enough levels and puzzles there and enough standard single player storyline there to justify ever playing that series, versus the people that really like that and they're playing it over and over again and playing it with multiplayer and all of that. Moving on, we have Kaze and the Wild Mask launching March 26th, which is apparently a 90s classics platformer. Haven't heard anything about this, but yep, does look like Sonic if you would turn Sonic into a bunny girl. Let's see. Komatsu has Akiba's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed, Rue Fumizuki trailer, which Hellbound and Debriefed is the HD remake of the first Akiba's Trip game, which was never brought to the West. So this is all going to be new content for Western people, and probably not so much new content for any fandom in Japan. Yep. It's Seika with a C instead of Sega with a G. Not much of a trailer, really. Just highlighting characters, which I imagine there's a whole collection of interesting characters you'll run into in that game. Here we have a game on Steam called King Arthur's Knight's Tale. There's, I think, a famous novel called A Knight's Tale, and then there's a movie called A Knight's Tale. This looks like this might be a decent story, decent type of game. Also, certainly you don't have a lot of stories set in a Arthurian time with a whole bunch of monsters and crusaders. That's an interesting idea. This is early access, $34.99, English full audio, single player only, which is weird because I thought it was tagged here, player versus event. Well, I'm gonna put this on the fall list, but I want to see it come out of early access, and I want to see what kind of game it really is and how well it's received. It does kind of feel like it's an XCOM game with, like, now that I'm looking at it, you're taking turns and doing placements, and that may not be the type of game I want to play. There's a decent chance that's not the type of game I want to play. Next we have a game on Steam here that's just all Asian characters, and it looks like it is a Chinese cell phone port of a RPG. It's free with in-app purchases, Chinese only, but yeah, doesn't look any different than the hundreds of other games like that we've seen. GameIndustry.biz has an article here that Hitman 3 has recouped the project cost in under a week. This puts us in a really good place. That's arguably not much different than most games, most big games, because of how heavily they push pre-orders. And certainly there are ways to manipulate the values there.
Be gone.
I've been keeping this in reserve.
Clash.
Blast my way through.
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The Xbox Game Pass is driving revenue at Microsoft after crossing 18 million subscribers. Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Which is weird that they can come out and announce a big number like that and a bunch of success right after they tried to raise the price and caused a controversy on themselves for no good reason. That was really dumb of Microsoft to do it. And yeah, Microsoft is far too big of a company to have these kinds of missteps. There's clearly some dumb people in charge in some places. Techraptor has the same article here. The Xbox Game Pass subscriber count hits 18 million. There is also, it sounds like, some evidence there that when they came back and apologized for trying to double the price on Xbox Live Gold, they They said that they were going to make free-to-play games free. Apparently that was already in the works. So that would be, I guess, the ultimate form of stupidity, is to do something that would piss people off just so you had a reason to apologize. Like that would be like some insane level of trying to neg your own customers if that was the case. But so yeah, frankly, free-to-play games shouldn't have required Xbox Gold for many years. There's a lot of argument that having to pay for online services at all is ridiculous, as more and more of that content is being hosted by the game developers themselves. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. The open world survival MMO the day before has been announced for PC, which, okay. Let's see what this looks like. I've had like no lagging or loading on any of this. This feels a lot like just an urban survival. What was that game? Not this feels a lot like The Last of Us, this particular scene, but I was thinking more around that Tom Clancy spin-off game that they made 2 games around, The Division. Yeah, that's what this feels like. It's just a Division clone. Unless there's going to be something spooky or some monster that jumps out at the last second here. Yeah, I guess they are zombies. So you can see they're eating somebody. So, a generic MMO in a zombie apocalypse. I'd have a hard time believing that that's going to succeed. Okay, sir. Anything we can do here? No. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. The story-driven action RPG Bator Lost Haven has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC from the developers of the Remothered series. This does not look like the Remothered games. Let's see. There, it does have a Steam page already. Let's see what the trailer looks like. Yeah, so far not showing much, but it looks like it's kind of polished, soft CG. Kind of looks like something you would expect that would either be like a Fortnite clone or would be reminiscent of an Xbox 360 kids game. But then it has some fairly dark backgrounds and definitely wants to highlight the magic actions. If it was brighter, I would just assume it was a JRPG, and the actual gameplay looks way different. It looks closer to a high action like Torchlight clone would be my closest equation there. Whereas Remothered is a completely different type of game. But I can't begrudge any company for wanting to try something different.
Designs are like unhatched dragon eggs.
Darn it all!
Let's see.
I love this job. Of course I do.
Let's see.
Time to say goodbye.
Hatch inspiration, Eureka! You've got guts. I've seen them.
I guess since this game already has a Steam page, I guess I'll wait until it, like, I guess at this point though, waiting is stupid. I need to put things even without release dates on the follow list, just in case I forget about this game later on. And see, if we go and look at Broken Porcelain, that has mixed reviews, where Tormented Fathers was 77% positive, and the collection is 72% positive. This may very well be a bit of a pivot, or they may have been working on Batora when they were working on Broken Porcelain, and that's why, that might be why it's not as well received.
You don't want to miss this.
Let us battle
See.
side by side.
Discard a card.
Pitiful.
Good luck.
I'm pausing here
You got
every now and then.
I've seen them.
It's getting harder to stay mentally alert. I think my brain is moving towards a sleep state, whether my body's going to sleep or not. Gamatsu has an article here. Shindra's changes its title to Ashwalkers, a survival journey, and launches this spring, which, yeah, unless that's Cinders, and that's how you spell the word Cinders, which I don't think that's how you spell the word Cinders. Yeah, that's a terrible title. If I look at a word and I can't even begin to think about how you'd pronounce the name, that's a problem. This looks like it's a kind of survival simulator game. I don't like the black and white part of it. That's the only thing I would say here. I could see playing a game like this, but I would not want to play a game that was black and white the whole time, or felt black and white the whole time. Yeah, I think at this point I'm not going to get a single victory in this stream. Haven't dropped any frames either. Man, the internet is working. I am so happy for that. To the point where I probably won't even bother trying to fix the things that I think aren't working for a while. I've got better things to do. OpenCritic has the first few reviews of the Medium, which came out with not much of an announcement, and that seems to be pretty much the way things are just gonna always go. Is that there seems to always be a bunch of hype right before the game launches, and then they go mostly quiet for a few days to a week before it, and then I never actually hear about much hype when the game actually launches, and then I'll hear reviews. And the reviews for the Medium don't seem to be amazingly great. It's getting fair reviews. Here you have Game Radar Plus giving it 2.5 stars, and Game Informer giving it 6.8 out of 10. Or PC Gamers giving it 92, and Your Gamers giving it a recommended. So perhaps the reviews will get higher the later the reviews come in. You can almost assume at some point that the earlier the review, the higher the likelihood that the person didn't have a lot to say about the game or rage quit the game, and thus that they're not gonna miss a deadline because of it. Whereas if somebody was incredibly in love with a game, they very possibly may just do a first impression on launch day and then do a full review later once they put 100 hours into the game. Moving on, we have the Jump Force DLC character Yoriichi Shinhoin, launching February 2nd. This is the Bleach girl, a character from Bleach, and she's in fairly more revealing outfit than she wears in any of the Bleach I ever saw, and I've seen, I think, all of it, including the 2 movies now. It's a shame that Jump Force is just not a better game, because the idea of all these Shonen Jump characters fighting each other is really appealing. In Bleach, she has like an ability to use energy that will break her own clothing, and that's why her back is like exposed. But she also seems to have some cat abilities. I would also say the 3D model of her doesn't look particularly great either. Bleach is a fairly old anime that they may be drawing her off model because nobody has drawn her at all in a while, or they could just be not really caring. She's hardly even in the top 4 or 5 Bleach characters I would want to play as if I was going to play as a Bleach character at all. Yeah, Techraptor has their personal review for the medium. Let's see what they say. Part of the thing I think that could really kill the medium is I think in most of the game you are always playing with the split screen imagery, and I don't know if that really works as a concept. Or maybe you should, maybe that isn't always the case, or maybe this is just a visual assistance where you aren't always playing split screen, or you're never playing split screen. They gave it a 7.5. They say the medium presents intelligent horror and innovative gameplay inspired by Silent Hill. And you know everybody is obsessed with Silent Hill. But it far overstays its welcome and fails to provide closure. Oh man, it doesn't have a complete story. That sucks. The split screen mechanics work wonders for new kinds of puzzles, but a myriad of technical issues hinder immersion. So definitely, by that review, I'd say wait at the very least on medium. The pros are its amazingly directed atmosphere and music, hard-hitting themes with a point to make, and a protagonist who isn't afraid to provide a fresh take on horror. The cons are the myriad of technical texture and frame rate issues. And meandering plot lines that don't provide closure, and poor pacing in both story and gameplay. Yeah. Maybe they'll remaster to do an edit on the medium. I kind of wish there were more remasters or recuts, director's cuts of games. Like, there's enough of them out there that with just a medium amount of tweaks, you could give it a second go instead of trying something brand new again, which is always a risk. Let's do that. And then this.
Is that a human?
And that.
I'm done sticking my head in the clouds.
And then probably should have done that.
I told you to leave.
Let's see, Gamatsu has Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 for PC launching March 23rd. Which, okay. Puyo Puyo Tetris. Looks like Puyo Puyo Tetris. Aged 3. Thus the more child-friendly anime. Yeah, animated characters. I wouldn't even really call this animation style anime so much. Japanese people would, but like you see very little of animation style like this in in more adult anime. You pretty much don't see any animation style like that. There was one show that I can't remember that was animated like that, but it was also kind of a parody show, and it was animated that way to be a parody and to be silly looking. Yeah, Panty and Stocking Garter Belt was the name of the anime. And so even in the title you can pretty well tell that it's not for kids, and it was trying to be particularly edgy. And from what I'd heard, it was a fairly edgy anime show. I never got around to watching it. Moving on, Gematsu has Princess Connect Fest 2021 online set for February 20th and 21st. Fest being festival. So there's a whole bunch of things that they'll talk about to probably announce one, maybe two things that are actually worth mentioning. The Root film launches March 19th in the West, according to Gematsu, which Root film is the name of a game, not a actual film. It's, I believe, the second or third game in the Root series. Kind of visual novel, horror, murder, mystery, maybe games. That's what I think they are. Of course, I probably should know what they are. Just, there's always so much to remember, and it's so easy to forget.
Prove your worth. It won't be long now.
Did I not pray hard enough?
Let's see. Nier Reincarnation has an official live stream 0 set for February 2nd. Nier Reincarnation is kind of like the walking simulator that's going to be for iOS and Android. At least it looks like it's a walking simulator so far. They may actually put some gameplay in it at some point before they release it. Here we have a game on Steam called Right, the Eye of Atlantis, which feels like you might be playing as a bird flying around. No, it's a VR game. Kind of feels like Myst, if Myst was set in Atlantis. Interesting. It feels like they actually tried here, and that this isn't just an asset flip VR game. $15.99 VR, English and French full audio. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. Unfortunately, it's a VR game, so unless I was gonna buy a VR headset, which I still don't feel like doing that.
Time to tidy things up.
And make sure I put that on the fall list. No, I didn't. At least it doesn't seem like it did.
Are the brightest stars in the sky.
Remember, I had a whole bunch of games left over from Monday, and I'm potentially not going to finish all of those, even today. Do that.
Let hope shine on.
Do. See. This.
Do not seek
This.
what is not
Dragon
there.
and I are
Yes.
one. My dragon and I are one.
My turn. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hidden Shelter. This looks like it's probably an asset flip horror game. Maybe there's a little bit more visual polish here than normal, but there's a lot of dark screenshot syndrome also.
Drag.
Survival horror game for $8.90. Portuguese, Brazil, full audio, English, and Spain, Spanish otherwise. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I've yet to see a great number of good Portuguese, Brazilian games. Right. 3 damage to 2 random enemy followers.
Burns, but blue is hot.
Stop!
Let's see, we've got an article here that NVIDIA has a touch sensing trackball that they've patented that they're saying promises mouse-like accuracy in a controller, which honestly, if it was that easy, people would have done it a long time ago. But there is something here that I am seeing that I have preached we needed in controllers for a long time. That is mouse wheels for weapon selection. So no longer do you have to hold down a trigger, perhaps, to pull up a weapon wheel to select and point in one area. So I wouldn't be surprised, like patents never look like how they actually look like. They're general descriptors. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do start to see this be an idea, certainly. Whereas this is an old hat idea and it's not going to really work. I don't even know why you would need a whole ball anyways. Like, the only idea there would be that the mouse ball upside down would be able to, you'd be able to roll so fast and so accurately that it would be at the level of dots per inch and consistency of a modern laser mouse, and I just don't think that would happen. There is certainly in this patent also not a lot new. A 4-way D-pad instead of an 8-way D-pad, just 2 triggers, USB, a connection button, pause, share, and back, and then a four-way layout buttons to control it, 2 grips, with seemingly nothing on the back side of that. That's not super imaginative, with the exception of the mouse wheel concept. They've got 2 ideas that they're throwing out there. It would also be fairly interesting to decide if you were going to stick with NVIDIA or go with NVIDIA for a controller as a PC gamer. I don't think that's the right move. I think you stick with an Xbox One controller. So unless NVIDIA sells their patents to Microsoft or open sources their patents, which then if they were going to do that, why patent it in the first place? Them having mouse wheels and them having a mouse ball is actually ensuring that we won't see that technology in a Nintendo Switch controller or a Xbox or PlayStation controller. So NVIDIA is really just spoiling the pot. And I can't imagine that NVIDIA is just going to come out of nowhere having no experience with making controllers and make a good controller that plays well and has tight controls. It's going to feel like a third-party garbage controller. If Valve couldn't succeed in making their own controller, I don't think NVIDIA is going to succeed.
The resplendent phoenix graces you with her presence.
It would probably be nice to see Valve give that another chance, but that they've moved their focus to controllers that would work for VR, and at a certain point, that is the next step. Regardless of what you add to your controller, you've got to make all future controller designs, unless they're just going to be iterations on old designs, you've got to make them VR compatible. Something you can pick up and hold and recognize where the buttons are without even seeing them. If there are even buttons on a controller. Next we have an Asian game here that looks like it's a adventure game of some sort. Kind of a RPG game. Doesn't look terrible, but it's clearly Chinese only. And there's a lot of things they're showing you here that don't feel like gameplay. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of just mostly a top-down twin-stick shooter. English is not supported, $17.99, Chinese only. And see, inherently this is a problem. You have 100 achievements here, so maybe it's an achievement game. But even if it is a good Chinese game, they want $17.99, which is probably a little too expensive, particularly knowing the Chinese audience, since I imagine they don't have a lot of extra cash to be spending that much on something that looks this level of quality. I suppose at some point it would be prudent to also revisit how people's social credit score gets affected for buying video games these days anyways, because there definitely was talk, at least originally, that kids and adults' social credit score would be deducted if they purchased things that were more entertainment things versus things that would be used like shoes to work in a factory. Yeah. And I imagine that's still likely to be the case. Moving on, we have a game called Midgelina, which has a unique art style to it, but I'm not sure I quite understand what kind of game it is, if there really is a game here. Does feel kind of awkward as far as the screenshots they're showing me. Seems like you place characters and just kind of move them to fight each other, so it's like a tile-based placement fighting game. It's early access, $5.99, English only. I kind of like this art style, but yeah, this is definitely not the kind of game I would want to play, so I'm gonna have to say no to that. Discard a card and deal 4 damage.
Here comes the title winner.
Mean son of a gun, ain't ya?
And then
Be gone.
evolve.
Melancholy keeps fall. My heart weighs heavy. I'm out of cash.
Next we have a game called Skid, which seems like it's just a low effort drifting game. 59 cents, bunch of languages, nothing there of interest. Next we have a game called Zombie Drift, which is another drifting game. And I'll say just ditto, 84 cents, English full audio allegedly. There you go. Do we want to evolve? See, Gamatsu has a game called Balin Wonderworld demo,
How did I miss
where
that?
you're apparently playing as some kind of character that I guess maybe transforms, or cosplays. See what this trailer looks like. Yeah, seems like it's kind of a kid-friendly looking game where you get different kinds of gems and that puts on different costumes.
But this ends here.
Yeah, I could see something like that. It's very Mario-esque, and I'd always like to see more games that are Mario-esque. And this is a kangaroo outfit, which I guess the idea of making the character jump higher. Yeah, this looks like something I could try. Although inevitably the problem here is that a lot of these games look very interesting and then they play pretty terribly. A Hat in Time is kind of a great example of that, where I really wanted that to be a much different game and a better experience than what it really was. It's definitely hard to compete against things like Mario Odyssey or even Mario 64. Let's see, Pure Day 2021 live stream set for February 3rd, so more Pure Tetris type games, or some other kinds of Pure games are probably going to be announced.
Not when I have my words.
Blessed is the promised day.
Open your ears.
Here we have a game, 1001 Jigsaw Home Sweet Home Wedding Ceremony. Yeah, this obviously is not going to the follow list. $2.99, bunch of languages. I think we can pretty much just ignore any Jigsaw games ever announced going forward. Let's see. If I did this. Do that. And then
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
that.
Time to say goodbye.
That's enough heat. Let's quench it.
Should have evolved that and attacked that one.
Strike.
Let's see.
Strike.
But I didn't, so I failed. So I'm gonna lose. Well, I lost anyways. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has a job listing here for Disbelief as a junior programmer. Chicago, Illinois, or Cambridge, Massachusetts. Seems to be where you'd be working out of. I feel like if I am gonna win with the Dragon deck, which clearly I'm not, the discard deck is probably the only deck I've even built that has any strategy to it. Here we have a game on Steam called Skeleton King, which is an asset flip infinite runner by the looks of it. 99 cents, whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio in every single language. Seems like you just run as a skeleton and you're either dodging the red skeletons or trying to run into them. I think you're trying to dodge them.
I have to act.
See, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Art design deep dive, giving back colors to cryptic worlds in Dead Cells. So they're talking about the color palette in Dead Cells, which there is, I think, a level where more people need to think about the color palettes that are used when designing and drawing and animating more than they do. It is perhaps a little bit old-fashioned art style, art theory, and seemingly people tend to kind of forget about it and think they can do whatever they want once they get to the realm of digital. And you can certainly use any colors you want, but it thematically won't feel the same. But also, in all fairness, I will say there has never been a game I've played where I've said, wow, there's just way too many colors on this scene, and that is making me confused as to what I'm looking at. At least not until I see games that are just like vomits of neon color. We have seen instances of that. But yeah, if that article interests you, check it out. Techraptor has an article here. Portal Games announces Dune House of Secrets for 2021, which they are working on making a Dune movie, so it shouldn't be super surprising that they would be working on a Dune video game. I think most Dune fans will more than likely say that Dune as a novel series will not do well as a movie or a video game, although video game may have a slightly higher chance of being successful than a movie would. But it's just such a complicated and long-running story that yeah, depicting it in anything other than its native novel form is almost certainly doomed to failure. Hmm. Let's hit that. Techraptor has an article here. Lust from Beyond release date has been delayed to late February of 2021. Lust from Beyond being the sequel to Lust from Darkness, which arguably wasn't enough of a game to get good reviews. I can't hit play on this video though because it's probably going to show a bunch of neo-pornographic images. Well, it starts off just showing a creepy looking white dude, which that's probably unfair to call anybody creepy, but that's the impression I got. Yeah. But there in the middle of the video is some depictions of the game, and actually it does kind of feel more like an actual game. Apparently they're going to make multiple prologues instead of just one. That's kind of crazy.
Foul forces of darkness, bow before my tempest.
The blueprints!
Wind, grunt
When
and
this
courage.
game comes out, Lust from Beyond, it is going to be one of those it is going to be one of those games where if it manages to be really well received, then I might have to try and find some justification to try and play it later. This also creates a weird situation where, because they're potentially making multiple prologues, and the prologues are going to be sold as decent standalone stories, then it opens that door that there might be a lot of prologues on Steam that I've ignored up until this point that actually should have not been ignored and should be played. I don't know. At a certain point, though, that feels like reviewing the trailers to movies because you review movies, and I'm not sure I'm willing to go that route. Let's see.
Be gone.
Where the wind blows, a heaven storm.
Hit that.
Wind, grunt and courage.
Yeah, at the moment there's a prologue called Lust from Beyond Scarlet, which actually doesn't have prologue in the name, and it's free to play, so I'm gonna stick it on the fall list, I guess, and I guess we'll leave it at that. I do own Lust for Darkness. I must have purchased it at a deep discount. Right now it's 90% off for $1.50, so and it's worth still mentioning though that Agony is made by a different company, and they're working on a different sequel. And Agony is still mixed reviewed. Arguably, there's a decent chance that the reason why Lust from Darkness is better reviewed, well, no, it's mixed also, so they're both mixed reviewed. Nobody likes either one of the games that much. Which that really might just be a good argument to not play either one of them and instead play a better reviewed, better received Japanese adult game or some other better received adult game from any place. Susan Wojcicki put a YouTube video up, and she hasn't done that in probably 2 or 3 years. I didn't even know I was subscribed to her. And then she's done a blog too. Letter from Susan, our 2021 priorities. Which I imagine this is just going to be a lot of just hamstringing and hand holding. Like I imagine not too much is really planned to be said.
It won't be long now.
Something's not right. Let me feed.
Stop.
Let's see. Yeah. So the priorities, according to the bullet lines here, are growing the creator economy. Good. Allow creators to make more money. Hey, also let smaller creators back into the YouTube Partner Program. Policy transparency. They've kind of failed at that miserably. Additional sources of revenue, of course. Supporting the success of all creators. That would be nice. And then second category here is living up to responsibilities, which vaccination is going to be a focus, and health and racial justice is going to be a focus, which so far at least they made it halfway through this article before they started getting slightly SJWE, and like I only call racial justice SJWE in this case because it's YouTube. If they really wanted to help minorities and underprivileged classes, they should just donate to charity with their Google money, not try to force creators, pick and choose winners and creators and force them down the throats of people. Let's see, what else is this? I'm just gonna skim this. Helping people learn new skills. Yeah, I can see why that would be a new focus. Then building for YouTube of the future, more mobile creation, more commerce, more living room, I guess, a better living room experience. And then, of course, fighting any regulation whatsoever that would control YouTube and all at the very end there. There is something certainly to be said about how incredibly late that article is. Like, we are talking, this came out on January 27th. Anything announcing your focus for 2021 could have easily come out December 15th or later of 2020. Or at the very least, you would expect it to come out somewhere in the first week of January, whatever Monday that would have been. So she probably didn't write any of that in the first place, but she's late to even announcing it. Let's see. Moving on, Gamasutra has a report here that Scavenger Studios co-founder allegedly groped and screamed at employees. At least these are more concrete, straight said allegations. There's a news group thing on Facebook that I started following, and it sometimes puts some extremely clickbaity, vague descriptions of like people being convicted of things, and I'm like, can you explain better as to what they were actually convicted of? Um, like one of them in particular was an article that said like person convicted of distributing photographs. And I'm like, why is distributing photographs illegal? And then you have to dig down and it goes, oh, it's child-born photographs. That makes more sense. But they won't even say that on the title, so then the next time they did a similar article, it was just a person convicted for distributing lewd images. I'm like, why is somebody distributing lewd images illegal? And then you go back and it's child porn again. Unfortunately, it's almost always child porn in these scenarios. But yeah, just put the truth in your title. I don't know why they do that. But that brief tangent goes to kind of show like the problem that's been happening with the video game industry for 2020 is that they would say that somebody was hostile, creating a hostile work environment, but then the actual accusations were not getting repeated, which I guess maybe these news sources were afraid of being sued or something. But they really need to get over that. That won't. No lawsuit like that will really hold up as long as you're reporting what someone else says. According to an extensive report in GameIndustry.biz, Simon Daravo has been accused of an array of toxic and abusive behavior. See, that's what they usually say is toxic and abusive by employees of the Scavenger Studio, makers of the Darwin Project, in the upcoming game season. Okay, yeah. And see, because they apparently he worked at Ubisoft Montreal, which also has the same accusations, where he was a design director for Assassin's Creed 3. Because they've come out and just literally said that he allegedly groped and screamed at employees, I can say, alright, that sounds believable. Yeah, he should have his day in court, innocent until proven guilty and all, but at least I don't have that knee-jerk save the puppy that's getting kicked or contrarian attitude that I normally have, where it seemed very much like there was just a lot of people who are trying to create more cancel culture. Also, I suppose now cancel culture has actually come to roost and people are literally getting canceled. So it is, on the other hand, very important that these accusations either lead to actual lawsuits or they just get ignored as just accusations that should not be given weight one way or the other. They shouldn't be believed or disbelieved. And then I guess there is a certain point too, if you're not going to make a lawsuit and just make accusations, that's not right. Moving on, we have Techraptor has a Dyson Sphere program sales crossing 200,000 in its first week. It's obviously some kind of simulator where you are building a Dyson Sphere, which is the idea of building a entire metal or building around the star to collect all of the energy that the star is shooting out, which is probably not really an efficient way to, or necessary way to do anything. If you need that much energy that you have to collect everything being radiated by a star, at a certain point you need to then just have technology to extract stars themselves and collapse them into wormholes and have them explode. And I don't know why you would need that much energy in the first place. Moving on, we have a Techraptor article. The Castlevania Doom mod reimagines Castlevania as an NES classic. Which, okay. Do we really need classic Doom mods still coming out? Not really. Am I going to really complain about someone trying to do something creative and different? Not really. Does this, I think, really inspire that many people to go play the original Castlevania? Probably not. Yeah, and this doesn't feel like this would actually play much like a 2D Castlevania game. Or feel much like it. You can get it from the developer's itch.io page and use GZ Doom emulator to run it. Oh, and the links are at Techraptor if you're interested. Moving on, Gametsu has the Lord of the Rings Golem being delayed to 2022. Nacon is going to co-publish it. This game is, I think, likely to get pushed more and more until it finally gets canceled. The National Video Game Museum put out a tweet showing off a UK-produced 7-inch Tetris Vinyl for recorded by Dr. Spin, who is Andrew Lloyd Webber, like Andrew Lloyd Webber, for a brief moment made one song under a different name, Dr. Spin, and made this Tetro Your Dance song that did crack the UK top 10 singles chart. And so here's that record. And that's something I imagine a lot of people won't remember. Look at just how faded and yellow this is now. And this is probably quite the collectible. It's got the old Nintendo official seal of approval, but yeah, I imagine not too many people would have kept a record in a bag, which probably is a decent way to keep it in good shape. Nowadays, you probably would want to send a record out like that to be scanned by laser readers that they have for records. If you need the audio actually off of it, I'm not sure you really do, because you can listen to Dr. Spin's Tetris on YouTube through, which that's probably not the best. Probably not the best quality, but that's still fine. Let's see. Do I click on this link? Guess we do. Yeah. Second Dinner is got a LinkedIn listing here for quality assurance lead. Second Dinner is the Ben Broad company. This would be working out of Irvine, California. They are slowly building up. Their first project is a mobile game in the Marvel Universe that we think will capture the attention of comic fans and gamers all over the world. I'm not sure how many people will even be interested in comics in Marvel by the time this game comes out. So it's a mobile game. It's basically Hearthstone with Marvel characters. And I was assuming I was going to jump to it immediately when it came out and play it day one. But if it's a mobile game only, I probably still would jump to it. But I suspect what I would need to do is just play it off screen, because I wouldn't be able to stream it if it's just on cell phones. Which, okay, maybe I'll play it for half a year off screen as a side game for my own personal entertainment, and then if it ever gets ported to PC, then I'll start streaming it instead of Shadowverse. Let's see, moving on, Hollywood Reporter. We've got two articles here from Hollywood Reporter. Netflix has ordered Skull Island and a Tomb Raider anime series, which anime is being used in a disingenuous way by Netflix. They're just making a lot of adult animated content using the Japanese anime style, but it's not anime in my book because it's not really being made by Japanese people for a Japanese audience, and often it's not that good. What do you really do with a Tomb Raider anime series that isn't just trying to build Lara Croft into much more of a character? Because you're not going to be controlling her. You're probably not going to see a lot of platforming. Every action scene that gets animated is going to cut into your budget. So you're going to have to be fairly careful there. They may not care about the budget there, though. The company Full Circle, which is apparently a subsidiary of EA, is making the next Skate game. So they're hiring people. And so this is in both listings of jobs, mini jobs, but also announcing that they're making the game Skate now. Or they're announcing who is making the game Skate. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Nectar of the Gods, which seemingly you play as, well, it seems like you're playing as circles, avoiding insects. Yeah. This looks like a mess of images and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's a free-to-play game with a $12.99 DLC, single-player and online PvP, English only. That's not going to make it to the fall list. Techraptor decided to do an article here, 10 oddly hot video game villains. I did see someone on Facebook saying, stop drawing this character in the anime style, you weebs, which is an insult for anime fans, which I feel like that's very inaccurate. She has like a Freddy Krueger glove, and from what I heard, the demo that somebody played, all you would really see is you wouldn't even see her much, and she would just be, you'd hear sounds of her walking around but never really catch up to her, and she's apparently some kind of vampire. But yeah, I still really haven't seen a lot of a translation of this character to be much more lewd than just having a little bit more cleavage and bigger breasts. They drew her in such a way to make her big and imposing and fully clothed with a big hat. So yeah, while people are liking the character, they're not going crazy with it so far. So then they're naming a character named Meredith from Dragon Age 2. And then Tira from the Soul Calibur series. And there's a lot of underboob there. And Reaver from Fable 2 and Fable 3 is... This was attractive video game villain, so I guess they're throwing in some male characters too as jokes. Jack... I think Jack is a male character, a transgendered character, or a robot anyways, from Mass Effect 2 and 3. No, I guess it is a female character. They call her a she. Benny from Fallout New Vegas. This feels like more of a joke. Character named Guzma? I don't know even how you'd pronounce that, from Pokemon Sun and Moon. I don't recognize a lot of these. And then Gruntilda from the Banjo-Kazooie series. And then Dark Scion from Knights of the Old Republic 2 Sith Lords. Yeah, they're really throwing in a lot of troll joke things here. Sephiroth, Final Fantasy VII compilation. Melina from the Mortal Kombat series. Yeah, there's more jokes here than actual solutions. 10 oddly hot video game villains. I think I could probably think of 10 hot video game villains, and then the oddly part could easily be dropped. But I could probably think of 10 oddly hot video game villains also. Telltale Games tweeted, which is weird considering Telltale Games went out of business. But yeah, they're promoting a cosplayer, which retweeting some cosplayer is not a terrible idea. This is not the original Telltale Games. Of course, it's just the company that bought out the name from bankruptcy. See, Gamatsu has an article here. Little Witch Nobita adds the PlayStation and Switch versions. Full release is due out April 2022. So that game is continuing to be worked on. I believe, if I recall correctly, this is the game where you play as a witch, and it seems like you have several different magic attacks that you can play as, but you're almost playing as an anime character in a standard fantasy world, and you stand out as not being really connected with the other art styles. But also, looking at this trailer, this is a new trailer to me, so they may very well eventually retexture all these walls so everything matches a little bit more. I think also the idea was this was half anime, half Dark Souls. I'm not sure how much that's going to work, but seeing some new enemies here, it does kind of feel like it's going to work. Like you seem to run into other anime girls that turn into monsters, and so this might be more of a boss rush. There's a lot more gameplay here than the last time I saw this game. Like, it really just looked like a tech demo last time I saw it. See, and I'm not even close to the games I had left over, but I don't want to play any more of this. Like, we have failed miserably today. Not a single victory. I must have gotten one Dragoncraft somewhere. But yeah, I need to get at least one victory, and I failed at that. And I could have played Swordcraft and Bloodcraft and tried that, but probably wouldn't do any better. Here we have a game called Gravity in Space, which looks like a fly around in space game. That doesn't interest me. Early access, $13.99, English only. Seems a little expensive also. Do I have another entrance here? I mean, if I enter here, I'd have to pay. And I have tickets and I could do that, but I don't want to. This is an interesting statement on Techraptor. Capcom has condemned gacha and loot boxes in a new report, which seems a little weird considering how I'm fairly certain Capcom had plenty of capsule toys back in the day, so they were doing gacha with physical toys a long time ago. Maybe they're just condemning them in digital formats. Capcom is in a weird position, I guess, in general, where they're constantly trying to have multiplayer modes with Resident Evil. Even with the newest release, they're doing Reverse as a multiplayer mode that comes with Village, Resident Evil Village, but they've mostly been unsuccessful with several of their other properties. I wouldn't be surprised if they were smarter, if they had made a fighting game with gacha elements. So they're saying if you can't join them, burn them. In the Japanese game market, discussions have been taking place for several years on the problem of gacha or lottery-style game mechanicals, primarily in mobile games. Overseas gacha-like loot boxes have been banned in some countries. So maybe they're just seeing the fact that loot boxes have gotten banned, and so they're just cutting it off on the at the pass. As a creator of entertainment culture, is that what Capcom believes it does. Interesting. Capcom believes that games should be enjoyed for the entertainment value they provide with gameplay. They're really putting a foot down here, which means they've really done the numbers and they are not ever going to have gacha in their games going forward, or they're going to look like huge hypocrites. Not for the thrills associated with winning a lottery. We do not want to see games that are supposed to make people happy having the opposite effect as a result of excessive charges. For that reason, we are working to ensure that all our users can enjoy our games fairly and safely. In principle, we minimize gacha elements in the mobile games we develop. In our home video games, we provide any content required to enjoy the full game free of charge, while offering some additional content at a low cost. Yeah, but there's enough wiggle room certainly in this for them to come back and have a game with a lot of DLC and a lot of gacha anyways. So they may look like the good guys now, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we see them do a heavy DLC or gacha game. Also, it is fair to say that the Resident Evil games are full of costume sets. Some of them are, and DLC. They're not loot boxes, sure, and they're not gacha, but that whole statement very well may be more about their plans to just have excessive amounts of DLC in future games instead. Moving on, Martian Forest is now on Steam. This is a game we've been keeping our eyes on for a while. It's a cute anime moe girls fantasy adventure game. Screenshots definitely show me a lot of it than the trailers have up until this point. It's on my following list. It's $34.99, which is fairly expensive. Japanese full audio. And it only has 2 reviews. Apparently you also have a somewhat famous voice actress. Because they're highlighting that with a picture of her. So I guess I have to leave a game like that on the follow list because that's rather expensive and I would like to see some reviews before moving it to the wish list. Gamatsu has tennis action game Gachinko Tennis S now available for the Switch in Japan. A new title by Alpha Wing. It's a little surprising that there isn't a Mario Tennis on the Switch. Or maybe there is, but I haven't heard of one recently. This definitely looks like a game that you could put some polish on and put a Mario skins over. Inherently, whether or not the Olympics actually happen in Japan, there is... that's a giant sword that just came into the middle of the field. There was a lot of anticipation of Olympic Games happening in Japan, so we almost certainly will see games that would have been played at the Olympics being turned into video games for the Switch and maybe the PlayStation 4 and 5. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are translated to English and sold worldwide, specifically to hype up the Olympics, which may or may not happen. I think the idea is it probably won't happen, but the Japanese government doesn't want to say that. Here, Gamasutra has the article that says it directly. EA forms a new studio called Full Circle to revive the Skate franchise after hearing that Activision just basically dissolved the team that made the remaster for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. This may be a very flippant decision on their part, and maybe EA won't actually ever make a skate game. Next, we have a Techraptor article. The Terraria studio Relogic has been suspended from YouTube. I had kind of hoped that there would have been an update on this, but apparently not. Studio announced via Twitter they'd been shut out of their YouTube and Gmail accounts, and Google hasn't provided any reason for the suspension. They've been trying to work on the problem in private for 10 days, but they went public with it last night. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see a reason so far. Like, nobody's coming out and saying it's because Terraria like was an anti-mask or anything, or the account posted something inappropriate, but we may just be seeing more and more of the edges of civility and sanity fall for Gmail and Google in general, and they may just accidentally or flippantly ban and lock out a lot of people. And see, that certainly scares me, like, too, as somebody who's put a lot of effort into their YouTube channel. The idea that one day they could just lock you for no real reason or suspend you for no reason. The best thing I can recommend there is you should hire a lawyer and then have the lawyer immediately file them with a notice to maintain all data. That way they can't delete your files, although arguably because of the industry they're in, they probably couldn't delete your YouTube videos or Gmails for a very long time anyways. 7+ years, I would suspect. And I don't think YouTube even cares about saving space that way. Moving on. We'll probably have more to talk about that on Friday. Postal 4 No Regrets Early Access has the Wednesday update now available. Each update is another day. Yeah, by the time Postal 4 is done, it'll be released in such a different world that it's very possible nobody will want to play it or even allow it to exist. Or maybe we will have swung the other direction by that point. Gamma Sutra has The Last of Us Part 2 leading the 2021 DICE Award nominations, which, okay. Well, you've got another pointless award season apparently going to happen, all of which seem very late to the party. Yeah, all of these games look like the same games that won the Game of the Year awards. Speaking of Game of the Year awards, I mostly skimmed over the Giant Bomb Game of the Year awards, and I think that's pretty much the last time I will listen to their Game of the Year awards. It was awful, and it really just wasn't worth my time to listen to it. They had nothing interesting to say. They had not that much to really even talk about the games. Very often they talk about games in the context of how they were feeling emotionally, or they talk about one specific scene without giving a more generic review. Giant Bomb has pretty much completely abandoned the idea of reviewing games or even doing quick looks of games most of the time. They've become, from a outsider's perspective who isn't buying the premium content, that they've become just this personality people that are stuck doing the same podcast weekly, and that's it. Moving on, Techraptor has a new god coming to Immortals Phoenix Rising this week, which, okay. I don't know if Immortals Phoenix Rising, it's a single player game with DLC though, right? It's not like a Dota. Yeah. This is definitely one of those cases where playing a game, seeing a game getting DLC just confirms that I don't want to buy this game or play it until all of the content is out. And maybe when it's remastered at that point. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called VR Girls Room in Darkness, which Looks like it's probably an asset flip horror game with a kind of Chinese girl with glowing in her chest. We didn't see any adult games today, so maybe they are holding some of those back. This is $2.99, bunch of languages. It's nothing, obviously. Steam did come out with the games of December, and one of the top 10 sellers was the Funatari game, the Dick Girl game. Dick Dine and Dash, I think is the name of it. Which, it's not the first time we've seen an adult game on sale. It is the first time I think we've seen a just straight up pornographic game on sale, that as bad as that was as far as its screenshots, or how as graphic as the screenshots were. Bad is the wrong word. But yeah, apparently we're going to start to see perhaps at least one adult game making it into the top 10 sales every month. That may have more to do with who's buying games and who has money and who doesn't, and where people's heads are at. But it probably was always the case too. Adult games probably always were topping the charts. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Connect Chat here. This is just a VR Second Life skin thing with anime skins that you can do to chat to people. Early access, free to play, so the price is right. English only, with a third-party account required and a third-party EULA, so maybe it isn't actually free after it's said. But yeah, this is definitely not what I would want to do with VR, though, is waste a bunch of time pretending I'm an anime character talking to other people. I'd much rather prefer to talk to AI programmed anime characters and visual novels instead. Let's see. Next we have Zombie Van Drive on Steam, which is just a low effort infinite runner for 59 cents. English, allegedly full audio. These are the games I had left over. Here we have a game called Meat Lead Fire, which seems to be kind of a hardcore Plants vs. Zombies style tower defense game. $1.99, English only. We'll put that one on the fall list. There's a small, tiny chance that that might be interesting. Probably not, though. Next we have a game called Cyber Shadow, which this is a Ninja Gaiden clone for $19.99. I think I had already probably determined that I was going to put that on the fall list. It's rated very positively now that I've reloaded the page. But yeah, I'd still have to really think about, is this my type of game to play? Next we have a game called Kill Demons, which is apparently a turn-based 2D platformer. To me it looks like it's basically a black and white RPG Maker game for $5.99. English and Chinese, no to that. Next we've got a game that's written in Chinese letters, and it looks like it might be a card game or a tabletop game, like a hex grid type game with some conflicts. English is not supported, $3.19, Chinese only. Doesn't look terrible. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Skillet Time, which seems like it's a game where you're just trying to shoot things up in the air and keep them juggled. Skillet Time, I guess is how you're supposed to mispronounce that. $2.39, English only. Yeah, I don't see anything there of interest. Disgaea 6's Defiance of Destiny 6 trailer is out. I did hear that after about Disgaea 3, they did start to improve the experience a little bit on Disgaea, but the same reviewer also said you should play Disgaea 1, and I just think there's really not enough of interest there. I'd also say that the main characters seem to kind of jump around quite a bit, and so you're not really playing one story through all the Disgaea characters. It's still very much a very heavy on the strategy, very heavy on the placement game, where if I was going to play a Disgaea game, I'd probably want to play some kind of spin-off that had much more action to it. But yeah, those are definitely some different looking characters. Let's see. I did look, and I do own Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, which is coming to Games with Gold next month. So that is on Steam. I do own it. I just forgot I owned it, which is saying something. Here we have a game on Steam called Dasher, which looks like nothing of interest. $2.54, English only. I have about 10 more things, 10 more tabs. Here we have a game on Steam called Save Village, which is clearly just another asset flip anime girl shooter. It's $1.69, English only, but oddly, usually when they do this, they try to sell it on lewdness, and that one's not trying to sell on lewdness, which at least is slightly different, but only slightly. Next, we have a game on Steam called Wood Salt, which looks like a visual novel where you play with chibi characters. Not sure I could be convinced to play a game like that. $24.99, English only. See, usually when you see something like this, it feels like it's a cell phone port too. They're saying it's an interactive fiction RPG with multiple endings. So I'm not sure if it's really a visual novel or if it's an RPG game. And they're not making it easy to find out. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I wouldn't be surprised if it never even gets 20 reviews. Here we have a game called Legend of Crania, Cursed Fate, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter game. Might be something there. $7.99 English full audio. Let's give it a brief second here and see how the game looks in gameplay. There might be something there. Maybe there's a level of visual polish here that's more than most. So yeah, I'll put it on the follow list, just out of an abundance of caution. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Pebble Witch, which is tagged as an RPG casual walking simulator that's LGBTQ+. Okay. That seems like a lot of different things. $2.99, English only. I'll stick it on the follow list, we'll see. But I question if there's much of a game there, or if there is any game there at all. Next, we have a game called Azure Sky, which is seemingly a little too zoomed in. But yeah, I don't think there's enough polish here for this gameplay style to make me think this is gonna play smoothly. And having your life bar and energy at the top here, and then maybe having a secondary boss bar and energy doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. see. Action puzzle platforming game is what they're calling it. Yeah, I don't buy that. $1.59, English Russian. If you told me this was a student project, I'd believe you. But then you also have the problem of the thumbnail being way too visually polished compared to the real game. Next, we have a game called Endless Furry Killer 3D, which clearly is a joke. First-person shooter, asset flip game. $1.19, English only, nothing there. Interests me. Let's see. Next, we have Planet Cracker, which they're saying is a shoot 'em up game. And to me, it doesn't look visually polished enough. It's free to play, English only. 5 to 10 minutes per day. Takes about an hour to 2 hours to complete in total. Yeah, I don't think many people would actually commit to doing that. Next, we have a game just called Coronaviruses, which I'm a little surprised that you can name a game that. It looks awful. $8.99, way too expensive, English only. Let's see. I'm reloading each of these pages just so I'm logged in case I want to put them on the follow list, and they're all reloading perfectly. Not a single frame dropped today. Not a single stall. Whatever I've got it at now is working. So I'm happy for that. This is called Dungeons of the Deep. And yeah, it's a dungeon crawler with a decent, consistent art style. Not going for what you normally see, which is anime characters in dungeon crawlers. It's $14.99. No, that's really expensive. English only. I'm going to put this on the follow list because I'd like to see reviews, but honestly, this is definitely a pass. I couldn't justify that price. And I probably couldn't justify playing a game like that anyways. Next, we have a game called Faye Sleepwalker. Faye, in this case, F-A-Y-E. I don't know if that's how you spell fairy. The old English way of saying fairy. There's some anime girls here, and then there's some screenshots that don't look so good in the backgrounds. We can see it's mixed. It needs a controller. It's $17.99. It's Japanese full audio. I'm gonna make an executive decision here and put it on the follow list when really I should not, just because I'd like to see if maybe it'll get reviewed better, but almost certainly it's not. The fact that it's not in early access actually kind of hurts it. This is perhaps the first game that I would ever say that for too, because had you told me this was in early access, I might be able to hope that they would fix things, but it's not. So yeah, I don't need to follow that. This might be a hidden gem at some point, but I doubt it. I have about 5 more tabs. We've been going about 3 hours. Next, we have a game called Security Guy versus AI, The Dawn of AI. Looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter. Yeah. Looks like it's visually polished enough, but I don't know if there's a reason to play it. It's free to play. English full audio. Doesn't seem to have any multiplayer or in-game purchases or in-app purchases, so check it out if it interests you. Next, we have a game called Summit in Space, which looks like just a low-effort platforming, frustration platformer. 59 cents, English only. I don't want to leave any games for Friday because Friday will probably go long anyways. Next, we have a game called Stop and Move. I'm a little surprised I'm actually going to make it to the end of today's stream because I really was not feeling great. And I really was feeling like I was probably going to fall asleep. Stop and Move looks terrible. It's 99 cents, bunch of languages. These are some pretty low effort games that they released. Here we have Tunnel Blast, which is just a fly around in tunnels game. $5.94, English full audio. That's a pass. Let's see. I don't know if we talked about Runeverse, the card game, but yeah, early access, free to play. I'll put it on the fall list. And then I have like one more thing. We have a game called Sleeper Cell, which looks like a VR game where you're wandering around a facility. They're calling it an action strategy stealth game, but I'm not seeing any enemies at all. It's early access for $4.99, English only. Guess maybe I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and put it on the fall list. And so that finishes that. So then just reload the Humble Bundle. And let's see if there's any new games bundle today. Learn to create games in Unity software bundle. And might look at that, but no new games bundle. So let's see what they're offering here. They have, for $1, you get Finish It, Motivation and Processes for Game Devs, and Math for Video Games. And then if you pay more than the average of $19.11, you get Complete Unity Developer 2D, which probably has nothing to do with actual Unity. Apparently Unity was a fairly small company about 5 to 10 years ago. I'm a little surprised by that. How to get a job in the video game industry, that book's probably going to be useless. Get Smarter Learning Git in Unity, Source Tree and GitHub. That's something that I probably should learn, is how to use GitHub and Git better, and how to use it better. But yeah, I don't know, once again, if any of these software / books are really going to be that useful. If you pay $25 or more, you get a Polygon City Pack, Complete Unity Developer 3D, Unity Multiplayer Coding and Networking, RPG Core Combat Creator. A lot of this makes Unity programming more plug and play than it actually is, and it's probably going to become a hindrance. Unity itself, I think, is free, so buying this bundle is probably not the best idea if you actually are trying to get into programming in Unity. See, G4 tweeted out, "What shows should we bring back?" And the X-Play replied, "If you bring back Cheaters before us, I know where you live." So the idea that they would ask that really shows that they probably have not thought it through enough, because they shouldn't be asking fans of G4 channel what shows to bring back. They should have announced in their announcement things, what shows they were making, and that should have just been that. Yeah, I'm not sure I really believe that this isn't just some really half-assed attempt by G4 to pretend like it's coming back when it obviously really isn't. Even if it does come back, it feels like it probably will only come back with 2 shows at best. Apparently Daedalic Entertainment and Nacon will co-publish The Lord of the Rings Golem, on top of it being delayed to 2022. Twitch support is investigating the issue preventing some users from going live. Viewers of the streams will not see playback of the stream. Existing streams are not impacted. The whole GameStop stock thing is going on. Apparently the White House is, quote, monitoring the situation, where it would be really wrong, I think, for the US government to interfere with legal actions being taken upon the stock market. If they're going to try and make a fraud case against somebody, they should try it, but I don't think anything that's being done right now is fraudulent. It's simply one company that was trying to short a stock being thwarted by a group of Redditors trying to mess with that company. But at a certain point, that's just business. Susan Wojcicki responded to somebody directly. She said, "Thank you for helping others learn during these difficult times. Here's to better days ahead, heart." This is probably a YouTuber streamer that's fairly popular. So she's becoming more vocal. She's been fairly quiet for the past month or two. And she was never, Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, was never particularly loud or upfront as the CEO should be for YouTube. Still scrolling down my Twitter feed. We've got a couple of Daedalic games are now available for Xbox One and Xbox Series. Chains of Sat-Nav and Memoria. Guess I could show those off. We've got a couple of important news things that's actually happened while we were streaming. We may actually get to the point where we actually are getting real news finally, but I doubt it. I imagine it is going to be up and down as far as the prevalence of news throughout all of 2021. Hopefully these are in chronological order, these posts. I think they are. They should be. Yeah. Okay. That's good then. So probably the biggest news we have from Gamasutra is the Scavenger CEO has stepped down and suspended the creative director after abuse allegations. So the CEO, Emile Lamarche, has stepped down, and the creative director, Simon Darvo, who was the one accused of groping and yelling at people, has been suspended. So, yeah, that went fast. Let's see. What is this? What is the actual statement here? Also, apparently, Daisy Lily Best, Studio Director of Operations, is stepping into the role of Chief Operating Officer. The quote here is, "To ensure a transparent, fair, and unbiased process, I offer to temporarily step down from my role as Chief Executive for the duration of the audit. I will remain active available to support the studio's normal course of businesses. So, yeah. Temporarily stepping down, I suppose, is what he's saying. The studio has contracted an external auditing firm to conduct an independent workplace assessment. So, they've hired a contractor to say none of it happened, basically. Or at least that's what they're hoping. Let's see. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Rovio has quietly shuttered the game streaming service Hatch, which I don't recognize that name, so it must have not been that popular. The Techraptor has an article here. Black Desert Online will be self-published by Pearl Abyss in the West, which Black Desert Online is the Korean MOBA that's been fairly popular for like a decade plus. Fairly popular for the costumes and the outfits. I don't think there's probably a great reason to actually play it now, or to get into it now, though. And then, perhaps this is the bigger news. Techraptor has an article. Tencent has acquired a minority stake in Don't Nod Entertainment, which that seems like an odd choice for a Chinese-based company to buy Don't Nod Entertainment, which is most recently known for doing extremely SJW games. Like, alright, well, the most recent game I guess was Vampire, but before that was Life is Strange, and Life is Strange Before the Storm, and Life is Strange 2, also Twin Mirror and Tell Me Why. So, I don't know, maybe this is the beginning of Chinese companies buying the squeaker wheels. Also, though, I'd say Don't Nod Entertainment's kind of a failure as a company. They've been going a decent amount of time, and even the game Remember Me still didn't really play that well. So they kind of feel like the new Telltale company. Don't Nod will use the funds to bolster self-publishing effort. Yeah, this is Gamatsu talking about it. Gamatsu also has Terminator Resistance Enhanced delayed to April 30th, which I think Terminator Resistance was actually the decent Terminator game. Maybe. It's no longer due when it was originally due. And then Gamatsu has the Roller Champions Europe only closed beta for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC beginning February 7th. Yeah, I don't know if playing a game about rolling around can be fun. It can be, certainly, but you're gonna have to be careful. Certainly. Frankly, I kind of feel like roller derby is more of a joke, meme thing you would see in an 80s movie than something that you could actually go see being performed nowadays. So making a game around that is questionable, to say the least. Alright, well, I am still feeling a little sick, but otherwise I am insanely happy. We've had exactly 0 frames dropped due to network lag. We've not had a single game lock up or give us any trouble. We haven't had to log in and log out. I guess I figured out some setting that was the right setting, and so it can't be much better. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.